In order for us to act differently, we need to think differently. In order for us to think differently, we need to see differently.
Hi, this is Coach Anda. Welcome to Leading Great Workplaces. In this series, I will be talking to successful leaders and other globally recognized coaches on how they were able to create a great working environment by helping people thrive in their role. Through the stories of success and failures, you will be able to gain insights that will inspire you to lead a great workplace and build successful teams. I'm very excited for our guest for today. I've seen him in interviews, I've read about him. Very interesting guy. He's a coach for Velas Coaching, and his focus is on building resilient leaders and helping them thrive. So, welcome Luis Velasquez to our session today.
Thank you, Anda.
Excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. So one of the first things I want to ask you, Luis, is maybe you can talk a little about your coaching, the kind of coaching you do, and the theme that you're focused on, and how does that help leaders and companies build great workplaces?
I consider myself a resilient individual. I said I'm a resilient human. And to me, resilience is about adapting. And if you think about this, the goal of coaching sometimes is, you got to change. You got to change your behavior. You got to change this. You got to change that. And the reality is that the word change is very hard to assimilate. Yet everyone has the ability to take the first step. And that's what resilience is to take the first step, is to adapt to where we are, to bloom where we're planted. Let's put it that way. So that's
to bloom where we are planted. Nice. I'll remember that. Yeah.
If I would be able to synthesize my coaching in one sentence, it would be something along these lines. In order for us to act differently, we need to think differently. In order for us to think differently, we need to see differently. And that's what I do. And that's what I help my clients and teams that I work with, is to see a different perspective so they can start thinking differently about what there is happening to them, so they can start acting differently. And that is basically the essence of resilience, is doing things differently, adapting, and bloom where we're planted.
I like that, because it's all about the power of perspective also. Because
Absolutely.
you can, wake up and see your situation today as a bad day, or you can wake up and see the situation as a good day, and then everything is different about that day because of how you see it.
Yeah. And the other component that brings to that is that, there is a level of what I call, the difference between being resourceful and being a consumer of resources. Resilience is about being resourceful. It's work with what you have. It's make the best of what you have at this moment, as opposed to, okay, so when I have that, I'll be better. When I get that particular, situation or that particular ask, I'll do better, and that is not what resilience is. Resilience is to start where you are, and where you are is the place where you need to be at this time.
I super love that. Actually, I remember from the interview that I watched of you, that's the part that I took down notes and I tried to remember, because I think a lot of times we fight where we are and we want to be somewhere else. So it's starting with what we have and what we control. Is that what you're saying, Luis?
Absolutely. It's about, if you are at the bottom of a situation, that's where you are. And that's where you need to be. And that's where you're supposed to be. So that everything else from then on is getting better. And resilience is about taking those small steps. Never discount the small steps.
I love that.
Because that's what, at the end, it has a compound effect. It has an additive effect. The small steps will get you to where you want to go.
I love that. So where you are, meet yourself where you are, and that's where you should be, not anywhere else. Wonderful.
So that's the essence of my coaching, and that's what I do with my leaders. I go with the perspective that everyone is perfect. But we all have the ability and the capability to get better. He's talking about, the great places to work. There are some places that are so fantastic to work at. They can get better. And
already talking about the great workplaces, I wanted to ask you, in the coaching that you've done for leaders and for organizations, How has that kind of philosophy or kind of thinking helped build great workplaces?
It's very interesting. I was very excited about this interview because I am currently coaching a team in Canada. It's a fantastic place to work. Their CEO is one of those people that takes care of the people. They take care of each other. They help each other. They support each other. But what they needed to do is to figure out what makes them be as effective and as simply an amazing organization as they are actually working right now. This company is called Santen. Santen is a Japanese company. This team is in Canada. Okay. This particular team is superb. They're doing fantastic work. What makes this team great? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And we define their culture, trying to figure out what makes this team great. And they realize that what they do, they have an incredible cultural support. They didn't know that that's the way of doing it.
I didn't know that. Okay, I'm curious about that, Luis. So how did you make that come out? Like, let's say for a company, if there's our leaders who are listening and they want to be able to apply that concept also, like what makes them great? And let's say they didn't have a coach to help them and it was just them. Like what can help them think about that? Yeah.
So we did a bunch of exercises, but one very defined, one really good exercise that we did is to define what are the 3 behaviors or 4 behaviors that people that are most important for them. And so they started throwing out, oh, we do this, we do that, we do this. And then we start thinking about it, really, how do you do that? And we started telling you stories about those behaviors. And they came up with 3 behaviors. Is we back each other up. We actively listen to each other and we're transparent. Those are the 3 behaviors. There are many others, but those are the 3 behaviors that now they start, framing the culture. These are the behaviors that we are expecting to be displayed, not only at the leadership level, but everybody in the organization. You see what I'm saying?
I like that the behaviors are because the behaviors are more of the action steps. So it's the actions that people need to see to make that happen. Nice.
Yeah. And along those lines, the other component that we started to say, okay, so those are the behaviors. How we're going to use those behaviors to embed that cultural support that you have. You see what I'm saying? And then we came up with what I call a keystone habit. And the keystone habit is...
Keystone habit.
Keystone habit is the one behavior or the one component that if everybody does it, it will change and it will influence everything.
Wow.
So we start talking about that, and then it turned out that they say, what we need to do is to communicate, collaborate, and celebrate. They call it the 3 C's, communicate, collaborate, and celebrate. Great. So now those are the keystone habits for this organization. How are they going to do that? By showing up with the behaviors that we were talking about. We back each other up. We listen to each other. We're transparent. We are a culture of support. So all of those things are integrated. But the point that I'm trying to make here is they were already doing that.
Yeah.
What we want to do that is to define all of those elements that they were already doing and now making it more intentional, institutionalize those elements, if that's the word.
I love that. I think the key words there is acknowledging it, helping them recognize that those were their strengths, that's what they were doing well, and institutionalizing it and being intentional about it. I think those are really the keywords I'm hearing from you. Yeah. And I think to be intentional about it makes them even think about more ways to make those things happen even more, right?
Correct. So if you think about culture, there are two, the way I see it, there are people that are wanting to build a culture and others that are living the culture. In terms of doing the things that they say they're going to do, they have, from a compliance perspective, they're doing the same thing. But one is going to be like, oh my God, I have to do this now. You see what I'm saying? Oh my God, I have to do this now. The other one is that they're living the culture. I know what it needs to be done. I see that this is important for us. Yeah. So this company is doing fantastic work. They're not doing anything different, but now they're being more intentional about embedding that culture.
Yeah, I wanted to ask maybe a question on that, Luis. So if you're going to be, and I guess the hard part is the action step, like you have this idea of what you want it to be for leaders out there. So how do you now institutionalize that? Or how do you, are there some tips that you can give on how they can put that into practice. So they have already these things, but how do they convert it into action and intention?
So I think that, the way we're doing, we're working with my partner and I, what we're doing is what we call is embedding this culture even more. And by doing that is we're doing several things. Number one is creating stories around these three behaviors. Like stories that if somebody asks, so tell me about the culture of ascent in Canada. Oh, let me tell you, this happened a few years ago. Like the example about it was fantastic example. We were going to have our second day of this particular workshop or this particular kickoff meeting on the day of the inauguration of the President of the United States.
Wow.
Now, this company is in Canada, but it had a few people that are U.S. citizens that are working in the U.S. And so the CEO said, you know what, we need to support our colleagues in the U.S. Let's move everything because they need to. They want to enjoy this historical moment, the inauguration of the president. Those are the stories that embed the culture. Those are the stories that people look up. Wow, So when they say, for instance, like, tell me about the culture of ascent in Canada. Oh, let me tell you a story. When we were doing X, Y, and Z, the CEO stopped everything because they wanted to support the people in the US to go through the celebration. That's how the culture gets embedded. And that's how people start looking at this culture and say, I want to work there.
Nice. The power of stories. I also believe in that as well.
So that's one way. The other thing is about rituals.
Rituals.
Like rituals. Yeah, like for instance, like when you start a meeting, now they're starting a meeting. It's like, all right, guys, welcome to the all hands meeting. What we do here is we back each other up, we listen to each other, and we're transparent. Now, let's get down to business. It's just set the intention right away. You see what I'm saying? So the point is that the more we talk about the culture, the more gets embeds, and it's going to be backed up by the behaviors, by the stories, by the rituals, and by the mindset.
That's super powerful already. Yeah, all of that put together.
But the whole idea is the great places to work is not about perks or it's about how people feel about going to work every day. One way that we were talking with this company is like the way we do things around here. So the way we do things around here is we back each other up, we actively listen to each other, and we're transparent. That's the way we think around here. And that's how we embed the culture. And that's how, people, wow, I want to work in that place.
Yeah, it's nice because you're talking about the feeling, the experience of working in a company. And I think it's really about that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the head, like the planning, using your mind. But there's also that part about feeling it as well. So both go together. So the total experience brings that engagement as well. Yeah, wonderful. So I was wondering also, Luis, if you've worked with many leaders as well, and if you think about that one trait, maybe I know there are many traits of great leaders, but if you're to pick one trait of a leader that makes him be a great leader to lead a great workplace, what would that one trait be, or what would that leader that trait that leader needs to have to be able to build a great workplace?
That is if I were to answer that with one trait, that is $1 million question.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that it is not necessarily one trait, but I think that it is the ability to show up as the organization needs it.
Nice.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's about how do you show up?
How do you show up?
So if I were to put a name to that, is the ability to adapt. But to adapt for the purpose of service and helping each other out.
That's really beautiful. So to adapt for the purpose of service. Nice.
Yeah.
Just want to highlight that and say that again. Nice.
So I think that, I think that if you think about this, many leaders is like and I've seen this over and over again, is the fact that they were successful in one place and they feel, and they come to a new place and they expect to have the same results, unaware that they're different people, they are different culture, and I think that the ability to adapt to a new environment, but having also a purpose, and the purpose is to serve, the purpose is to elevate, the purpose is to there is a fantastic book that is called the From Good to Great. Have you heard?
Oh, Good to Great. Yes, it's a very it's been there for a while.
Yeah. And Jim Collins talks about the level 5 leader. The level 5 leader is, imagine the most competent leader. The level 5 has something additional, and that additional is the purpose of helping others and elevate others and serving others, and that's the key. But I think that going back to your original question, I think that leaders need to show up dependent on what the team or what the organization needs.
I like that. Yeah, adapting to the situation, really being aware of that. Because sometimes I see there's some leaders, kind of force fit. It has to be this way without really understanding the company that they're working with. I think that's
Correct.
wonderful. Adaptability. Yeah. So my last question to you is actually on a more of a personal story of yours. So I also want to know what brought you to resilience coaching, because all of us as coaches also, we have our own stories and why we're focusing on a certain area. So I'm curious to know what led you there.
So thank you for asking that question, and yeah, there is a lot of personal story behind it. And I think that, Dory Clark, right, the recognized expert course, she's a great person in terms of marketing and helping branding, let's put it that way. And one of the things that one of the principles that she says that we all are experts at something. And there are three different ways of showing expertise. Number one is you do the research, picture a professor. Number two, you write about it. You interview people and you write about the specific subject. Mm-hmm. And the other one is you live it.
You live it.
And we all have an expertise. We all are experts of something. And if I'm looking back on my life, looking back where I came from and where I am right now, I grew up in a third world country in time of war, in poverty. I came to the United States on my own, and through a scholarship. I got a PhD. I became a professor. I got a brain tumor. There is a lot of stuff that happened in my life, And as a result of that, I started trying to understand myself. How is it possible that I am always smiling and I'm always, positive with everything that I have gone through? And then I realized that my superpower is resilience. This is what I do. And resilience to me are three things. Resilience is commitment, persistence, and optimism.
Commitment,
if you're committed,
optimism.
If you're committed to something, you're going to get it. But that is not enough. Commitment is not enough. Persistence is you actually go and do it, regardless of how hard it is. And optimism is know that envision the possibilities. Once you see envision the possibilities, then it's easier to be committed and easier to be persistent. So that's what I am about. So it's the way I came to resilience wasn't doing research or wasn't writing about it. It's actually living it and understanding myself. Why is it that I am able to see things differently? And it goes back to what I was telling you about my practice. From I don't know, from since I have memory, the way I have coped with things is to see things differently. If you think about that, oh my gosh, I am at the bottom of the pit. the only thing that I could do is how else I can see it. Yeah,
And
so
I think really connecting to what you were saying earlier about how you help your clients as well. You help them see it, right? Or you help them see it in another perspective. And I can see actually the passion, and I can, you're we're in Zoom, but I can feel that from across. Like you're very passionate about what you were talking about and what you believe in, and how you're helping companies and yourself even with all of this. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that it goes back to, as a coach, what I want to bring is authenticity.
Authenticity.
What I want to bring is also a willingness to partner with you.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to bring is I want to bring the fact that I can see the possibilities. Can you see those possibilities for yourself?
Oh, I love that, Luis. And that really, I can see that even just by talking to you. But we learned so much today from our session together. I really enjoyed talking to you, and it makes me remember also the things that sometimes when I have bad days, we don't have good days all the time. It helps me just remember the tips that you just shared with us today. And those are the same things that I also listen to, and they're new things as well. And I will remember that. And I hope that's helped other leaders as well. Think about how do you create a more resilient organization, or how do you create a more resilient team, and also creating that culture. So Luis earlier talked about the importance of building a really good culture, and really focusing on what your strengths are as a team.
Correct.
So I hope that you can use that as leaders. So thank you again for joining us for today, and we'll see you again for the next episode. If you have any questions, you can email me at coachandagoseco@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Anda.